To the Melbourne to Hobart and Melbourne to Devonport race briefing. Martin Vaughan here, race director of Melbourne to Hobart. We're just going to take you through the weather and the situation that the fleet should expect. We've got 10 boats doing the Melbourne to Devonport. We've got another 6 boats doing Melbourne to Hobart. Fairly modest fleets this year, the impact of the large Sydney to Hobart year, but it's going to be some pretty interesting racing. So let's have a look at the weather situation. Okay, so let's look at the satellite formation of the clouds. You're seeing some fairly stable conditions, particularly over Central Australia, and the highs there are located over the Bight. They'll be a bit more obvious on the synoptics. See the 2 large highs and sort of relatively mild, stable conditions, fairly benign conditions for the start of the race. But going through into the race, we're seeing those 2 highs in the Bight. We're seeing them gradually coming together. And as they do come together, you'll see those sort of stable, consistent airflows, good breezes coming together. That high show fairly benign conditions, to be honest. We shouldn't see any dramatic winds throughout the race. Quite good conditions too for the Sydney Hobart, those who are curious. All right, let's have a look at the predict wind models and let's see how they interact. You're going to see we've got on the left hand side we've got the American model, we've got the right hand side we've got the European model, and one of the key factors is they're largely in agreement, which means we've got a stable weather forecast. You can see there's nothing significant really in the region of the race. The Devonport race, you're going to have some pretty good conditions there. The Hobart race, well, you're going to be well and truly in by New Year's Eve, which is all important. Now, the conditions for the start of the race around the heads area, we're going to move on in a minute. We're going to go into the Medeye model, and that's going to show some basically southeasterlies, 10 to 15, nothing significant. More importantly for those racing both to Devonport and to Hobart, you're going to see the wind clock around into sort of reaching conditions, which is going to make some fast and quite fun sailing conditions, to be honest. It's if you're going to choose a forecast for one of these sorts of races, that's probably going to be the one you're going to look for. Now the actual weather routing, we've got our Beneteau 40, which we tend to use in these sorts of videos, and that's showing some fairly consistent tracks, to be honest. We'll just wait for this to calculate, and let's have a look at that play. There's 4 tracks for the 4 different models, and they're not that divergent, to be honest, for the Devonport race. They're giving us a fairly consistent story, basically saying don't go too far off rumline, but they're just computer models. As you know, you need to sail to those wind conditions you experience. The actual summary tables are pretty nice. If you're going to look for a race, you'd want a summary table like this. The race is showing times there, as you can see, a bit over a day and largely reaching conditions. So, as Simon would normally say if he was doing one of these, peachy. At the West Coaster race, we've run the same models on the West Coaster, and this is interesting. This is, I mean, in the early days, the models are going to work. As the race progresses, well, you'd have to redo your models. But it's saying pretty much the courses converge until down the west coast of Tassie there. You may actually consider going offshore a little bit. I think you'd be brave. I'm a bit of a fan of run line myself. But you see the conditions are fairly benign all the way through. Some fairly strong wind coming later, but the race should be well and truly over by then. You're going to have plenty of spinnaker work. So dust off the spinnakers, dust off the sheets, and get the crew involved because you're going to be working very hard in this race throughout the whole race. Now the Derwent though, even we're not brave enough to predict the Derwent. Now let's have a look at our summary tables. It's a bit over 2 days, two and a half days, which is a very fast race actually, because you can look at the time percent upwind and reaching and the percentages and downwind, and that'll give you a bit of a clue of just how quick this race is going to be. And maximum wind speed, you shouldn't get anything over 30 knots there in those models. Again, these are just fantastic conditions for a race like this. You couldn't ask for better conditions. So I'm going to throw the gauntlet out to you guys. I've done this race a few times. I want you to beat your personal best. I want you to beat each other, and let's see who can actually get there on corrected time the fastest. Most importantly, enjoy the race. This is one of those iconic races. Have fun. Anyone who's following, keep an eye on the tracker, keep an eye on the ORCV website, keep an eye on Facebook, of course, and we will see you in Hobart for those doing the race. Otherwise, we'll see you online. All the best. Have a great Christmas.